Good morning, everybody. You can all hear me in the back, right? All right, good. Karan, congratulations. You have inaugurated an amazing gathering of leaders from marketing and communications. Really proud to see you do this. I know the last panel talked a lot about AI, so they kind of gave a setup for me. I have a quick show of hands for how many of you actually use AI a few times a week? All right, good. How many of you use it every day? Wow, you are really ahead of the curve. This is awesome. Very, very cool. So just to introduce myself, I'm Harjiv Singh. I built a global marketing business before I started CambrianEdge.ai. One of the things I learned was in the last 25 years, marketing has become the most complicated, convoluted function because there is no one thing. Ask yourself, you could be doing PR, you could be doing digital, you could be doing social, or you could be doing marketing research. That's a lot of different functions and a lot of different expertise areas. And how do you bring that all back to a single source of truth? Because the last panel was talking about what should CMOs be thinking about in terms of what AI is going to do to their sort of roles. One statistic I wanted to share with you, since you're all marketers, the shortest tenure function at any large enterprise is the CMO. And I know one of the panelists was talking about focusing on revenue, which is actually the primary focus, what every CMO needs to have, less on the optics, more on the results. It is a very, very hard place to be. And having built a global marketing business, I saw this sort of up close in the US, Europe, India, Singapore, Southeast Asia, that CMOs are constantly juggling multiple balls up in the air to make sure that they could convince the leadership of what they delivered every day. It is a very tough business. But I think AI can help reduce some of that stress, partly because it is not just about speed, as they were talking about, and I agree that speed is not the important element here, although it gives you that. The most important element is it is an intelligence layer that you all have access to today that did not exist before. So let me kind of set the stage. I'm going to do like a 6-act storytelling here. So there's 6 parts to this. I have 15 minutes, so I'm conscious of that. The way to think about AI is essentially, let me see if this works. Cool. So I'm going to give you the broader context of where we are today in the world of AI. I think it's very important to understand that. So all of you had your hands up that you're using it every day. You're in that sort of 16% who have used generative AI, but actually only 8% use every day. So you're the early adopters. So across the world, India, interestingly, according to a Stanford research, is the most optimistic about AI, partly because India also has one of the youngest demographics in the world. If I had this room in New York or in London, the average age would be closer to mine than the room we have here. And so there is a lot more natural fear because of that. The other part, which is really important, is only 3% pay for premium AI access, which means enterprises who are starting to begin their journey on how to think about AI internally. So there's a lot of new learnings that happen, but the one thing I can tell you, if you're young, you have an undue advantage because things change every 24 hours. China just announced yesterday that they have come very close to the Anthropic Claude models. It's called Moonshot. They're investing heavily, and I'll come to that in a minute. The way to think about how you use AI as organizations, as individuals, is to really think about, because you're early adopters, how do you create a global sort of canvas for your roles, right? AI will give you that undue advantage, which you did not have before AI. Yeah, you could, travel abroad, you could do Google search, but you know how it is, Google searches, you put a word, then you have to wade through 100 different things to figure out what you were looking for. AI is the opposite. So it's very important to understand sort of that nuance, and I'll kind of talk about that as well. Let me give you some myths about AI, and let me deconstruct those. Have all of you heard about AI hallucinates? Yeah? All right, good. Well, that's not a bug. It's a feature of AI because it's what is called a probabilistic system. So when you are putting in a prompt, and I heard about prompt engineering as well, don't let the word engineering scare you because you're marketers. A prompt is just really thinking through what you're looking for and defining it as clearly as you want it. AI is extremely powerful when that definition is as clear and as specific as you're looking for. I'll give you an example. So if I was going to look for demographic data in India, but I was actually looking for demographic data in West Bengal because I was tracking the elections, I would want to not put just India. I would say, in West Bengal, what is the demographic makeup of the population in India, right? So you would give that specific sort of prompt to get the right answer. Where most people make the mistake is they kind of just put a random thing, and then that's when you have to actually learn prompt engineering to know what the guardrails are. The other myth about AI is going to take your jobs. I can guarantee you it's not taking your jobs. It's actually going to create way more jobs than most people realize. I believe it is a myth propounded by Silicon Valley to increase the financial valuation of these companies. You've got the first one, which is out the door, which is SpaceX, which was valued at $1 trillion. First one. You got two more coming down the pipeline, which is Anthropic and OpenAI. But that doesn't mean the jobs are going to disappear. The only jobs that disappear are of people who will not learn to use AI. That is for certain because this is going to be the underlying layer of intelligence that every organization will have to work with. So this room, I see no fear. There should be no fear. You guys are already using it. You're using it every day. So that's a very powerful way to sort of build whatever you're trying to build in your careers. Let me move to the next slide. So the adoption of AI is a 3-act play. So we're sort of in Act 1 right now and transitioning to Act 2. And the way I like to explain it is, Act 1 is how I AI. So a lot of you are individually using this. Currently, there's really not that many options where entire teams can use it. You can individually use it, but you can't have your whole team on that platform. We kind of solved that problem, but I'll come to that in a few slides. When you use it individually, you're increasing your productivity, right? Not organizational intelligence. And that's one of the biggest bottlenecks for why the ROI, or return on investment, that every enterprise is talking about over the last 24 months has not been that visible. Because they have all been internally saying, hey, just get a ChatGPT license or get an Anthropic Claude license, but that doesn't shift the productivity measure because you're individually producing stuff, but you're not really collaborating and sharing. That is a very important part, and you'll hear more about it as I go along here. The next part, which is actually very important, is how we all AI, which is, I think we're just starting that process where companies and organizations are realizing that individual use is great because people learn how to use it. And there are two elements in this whole AI adoption curve. One is AI literacy. The other is AI fluency. So if you're using it every day, you're already AI fluent, which means you're ahead of the curve of 92% of the world. And having that fluency as an organization is the next big hurdle. So, in your organizations, if you look around, most of you, if you're using this individually, that's great, but how are you creating that intelligence layer that undergirds how you as an organization grow? And I think that's the part that every board, every company in the world is struggling with. If any of you saw what happened to IBM this past week, 25% of their market cap disappeared. It's the largest single drop in a stock price in nearly 50 years of IBM. It has never happened. You heard earlier in the year a term called SaaSpocalypse, which was all these SaaS companies were taking a beating on the market because every analyst believes that AI will completely disrupt. And that belief stems from the same belief I have that if you are not reorganizing the way you do business and your functions, it will disrupt massively. So if you're a publicly traded company, you should have already started that journey. And if you haven't done that, what happened to IBM is very easily possible to happen with every other large enterprise in the world. The advantage from that is small organizations can pivot and move faster. So AI also opens an extremely powerful opportunity for everybody who is a smaller, relatively smaller organization. There is no intelligence gap between a large company and a small company today because of AI. And that's very important to remember because you now have a competitive edge, especially if you're using this every day. You can run circles around larger companies. So that's an important takeaway. I think when you have to think about remodeling and rewiring your organization, the way to think about it, and I like to use this metaphor, AI is like the arrival of electricity in the world about 20 years ago. Before that, buildings, houses were lit with candles or oil lanterns. And imagine now you suddenly have electricity like we do now with AI. But the buildings that did not get built or wired with electrical cables could not put a bulb in, right? So that lighting up of what that intelligence is going to bring with AI needs to be rethought. Organizations cannot work in silos. If you look at any large enterprise marketing team, and I'm talking like if you think of IBM or you think of Starbucks or any of these large brands, the marketing teams are siloed because if you are, as marketers, you all see this probably that there's digital, there's PR, there's content, there's video, they're all sitting in different silos and it's very hard to have that single sort of intelligence layer. AI changes that for you, but only if you collaborate. That's the most important thing. So what happens once we all sort of get through this stage of how we AI? Well, the next stage is actually the more interesting one, which is why you require AI literacy and fluency to actually get the benefit of that, which is essentially that you are going to have AI as an intelligence layer where the human brings judgment, taste, and experience. But more importantly, all your tasks are actually going to be done by agents. And that's already happening. It's not that this is in the future. So we're in that transition phase where the early adopters, people who have figured out how to harness the power of AI within the organization are already using this. And I think learning why that is important is very critical. As marketers, you're probably advising clients or within your companies of what to do with AI. The most important thing to understand is your entire organization, when you have to work with agents, has to actually think about the human part of this more importantly. How does a human interact with the agent? How do we use them to do the tasks that we have done till now? It's a very big cognitive shift, and that's why the biggest challenge with AI adoption and transformation is actually human. The technology is not the problem, and which is why most mandates where people say, oh, just get a ChatGPT, log in, and you should be good, have not worked in the last 24 months. And the reason they haven't worked is because they thought this was a software upgrade. This is not a software upgrade. It's an underlying architectural change in how each and every person in every organization needs to be taken through the journey from AI literacy to AI fluency. Once you hit that curve is when you all will start to AI, right? And I think the way I think about it is 26, 27 is we're still in this stage 2, act 2, 28 onwards. It'll take us 3-4 years because I think there's, as you see, only 16% of the world, which is about the early adopters phase, has sort of gotten used to what this is, right? And that transformation is going to happen over the next 4 or 5 years. And the ones who have a head start, like all of you in the room, you have an advantage. You have an advantage in the job market, but you more importantly have an advantage in how you learn to use this effectively. And the sooner you start thinking about how your organizational transformation happens, you can sort of lead that change. So this is actually a phenomenal advantage for the youth of India, and I'll talk more about that as well. So how is AI rewiring marketing? This is actually very important because all of you are probably being told that this is going to take jobs, or I'm going to speed up everything, so I really don't need you, which to somebody who mentioned in the last panel, I agree that that is not going to change anything, because when you speed up stuff, what do you do with the time you save? Are you going to sit idle, or are you going to be more competitive by thinking how to redo the work that we have all done over the last 25 years? And so if you look at the left side, this is kind of like a broken structure of silos of how we've operated in the last 25 years. I'll give you a data point. The MarTech stack, which came after the arrival of Google on the planet, has been about 15,000 SaaS companies that came out. So if you're in digital, you probably use Hootsuite. If you are using other sort of trackers like Meltwater or other intelligence gathering tools, they're all tools. They're not platforms. They're not built for the AI world. And it is very important to understand the difference between those two. So to the left is how the world works, even today, primarily. So, we're just starting this journey on AI and transformation. On the right, the last but one box, the AI intelligence substrate, is very, very important to understand. Organizations that have that are AI native, as they're called in Silicon Valley, but that's, it's just an enabler. And companies that build on that have a very powerful advantage for the next 10 years. The companies that have not done that probably have a clock running against them. So I guess that clock is running against me. I'm going to take a minute or two and wrap this up. So remember, AI has to be the substrate, and you got to collaborate, right? When you're doing transformation, it's always about the 4 Ps: people, process, patience. Lots of patience. The larger the organization, the more patience is required. But also make it fun, because this is about people. This is really not about the technology. And a quick example of a couple of our clients. So Kristen runs Stanford Business School's communications team for the dean. It's 9 people. All of them use CambrianEdge.ai as their intelligence layer, because they can collaborate. Arnold is part of Gutenberg, and their entire global team across 7 countries, again, uses our platform, because we have built the entire platform to be model agnostic. You have all the world's models on it, so you're not only using ChatGPT or Claude. You have all of them, including the Chinese models. And you can do everything from, writing, creating videos. You can create images. You can plug it directly and schedule into your social media channels. It is extremely powerful when you get used to doing that. It's very hard to go back to where all of us are coming from. And quickly, let's see. Oops, sorry. Just a quick context. Again, I'm going to go back to the world of where India is in this mix before I wrap up. So this is the amount of money just in 25 that venture capital invested in AI. And there's a reason for that, and that's why you sort of saw what happened with IBM and some of the other folks. This is a massive shift. Money doesn't go if there was no return on it, right? So it's a good number to look at. While India here is at the bottom of that chart, look at the number at way below that. Amazon, Google, Microsoft invested nearly $70 billion in India in the last year, because they're building data centers, and India actually has one of the biggest advantages, which is the youth of India, which is all of you here, who can actually become the leaders of how AI is deployed globally, not just in India. And I think it's important to keep that in mind. So I want you to think about a few things. One, how do you get yourselves to be ahead of everybody else out there just by being more AI fluent? How do you sort of convince your organizations to get away from the siloed approach? Because it's the siloed approach which is going to slow people down. And because you're young and you have speed, you can move a lot faster. So focus on that and make it fun. Like, I don't want you guys to, fear this technology. You have a phenomenal advantage if you can harness it and use it to really elevate the career opportunities that all of you have here. We have an AI readiness test online, so if anybody wants to take that, it'll kind of give you a sense. You want to share it with your colleagues, please do that. It's a proprietary behavioral thing that helps you actually transfer from AI literacy to fluency and go up that value chain. You guys have been great. Thank you so much, and over to the next panel. Karan, thank you for having me.